So it's been a while since I got back to some true wire stuff, yeah? But I think I found something pretty nice and worth mentioning today. With Moondrop, kind of re-releasing and refreshing their Neko cake under like different names, different colors, different variants, you have to wonder where Tanchjim is in all of this. Well, actually, they're back, and they're bringing what can essentially be considered a better Moondrop Neko Cake slash space travel. And that product is called the Tanchjim Mino. So how is this thing better than the Moondrop Neko Cake space travel? Well, watch this video to find out. Let's begin.
The box of the Mino, it just shows how mature the brand is now. You just got like this very clean packaging overall. In the front, you've got this render of the Tanchjim Mino themselves. It really does remind me of a box that can come from like Audiotech or Final Audio, and not just like your often normal Chi-Fi. Now sliding out that cover, then you've got the inner gray box. As you can see, it's got Tanchjim special kind of embossed texture that it excludes a sort of premiumness and attention to detail. It's sort of a unique brand identifier now, because I don't see any other brand doing this thing, at least for Chi-Fi. So open up the top half and take that out of the way. We have this little small package here. Just take this bit out, open it up, and you will see first you've got the ear tips for Mino with small, medium, large sizes, and the mediums are pre-installed. You've got little tiny, very cute USB-C cable. Always nice to get a cable from True Wire stuff. Some brands don't even give you that. And this thing, which is apparently backup filters for the Mino's nozzle. I haven't seen any True Wire IEM with a replaceable nozzle filter, so interesting move here. And of course, finally, we have all the documentation you'll ever need with a little contact card here. And then you've got a quick start guide. I think this one's printed in Japanese, Chinese, English, and Korean. And then of course, you've also got the instruction manual. Very nice documentation and packaging. And then at the bottom layer, we're going to be seeing the Tanchjim Mino themselves fitted in this foam insert. So when you see the Mino themselves, I guess the two things that are coming up at the top of my head is that it looks like the AirPods Pro and a combination with the Moondrop Neko Cake. So you've got this very, I would say, pebble-shaped AirPod-like case. However, it has a clear lid. Look at this. And it shows the Mino kind of resting inside. It's a very visually interesting kind of design choice, and I really like it. Definitely gets a thumbs up from me. It's nice and small. It's quite elegant compared to the more brick-like case of the Neko Cake. And it slips into my jacket pocket quite nicely. Now when you flip up the lid, it activates the Mino. There's a useful LED that tells you the battery status and other True Wire stuff. And of course, the USB-C connection at the bottom of the case. Now let's go to the earpieces. Take it out from here, and you will see that it is basically a stem design like the AirPods, although it does seem more like a modified version of the Moondrop Neko Cake's earpiece. It's got a similar bulb and kind of nozzle shape as well as nozzle length, but the stem here, as you can see, it's more curved, and it's got silver accents on the white version here. Got the Mino and Tanchjim writing on here. Looks really nice. The earpieces, very nice and light, with 6 hours of battery, lowering to kind of like 5 with noise cancelling or transparency mode on. I do get roughly similar run times to what it advertises, maybe a bit 30 minutes or an hour lower. The case here, it claims to give the Minos like 5 extra charges. In practice, it's closer to 2.5 or 3. But yeah, this small nozzle and the case design. Let me just take the tips out. Let me show you the nozzle. It's like the small nozzle, it's narrow, right? So because of this, when you put the Mino into the case, you can't use like super big ear tips with it because it might not fit in properly and like not charge properly with the case. So do keep that in mind. Use shorter and smaller 2WS tips. Don't use the big types. So aside from just playing your music, the Mino also does have noise cancelling and transparency modes. With the ANC here, it's not like class leading, but it'll do a basic and well enough job, tuning out the low humming noises from like your engines or like from your AC. The transparency mode, while it has a bit of raspiness to the sound being piped into your ears, just for general situational awareness, you can use it in a pinch and it works quite fine without sounding too artificial. What you also get is the Tanchjim app, which is actually quite refined and seems to be better than the Moondrop Link app. It offers you EQ presets that are honestly pretty good. I find myself really liking the popular sound preset, which gives the Mino sort of weak-ish bass due to its design. It gives it a bit more of a bass boost to sub-bass regions, sort of a more Harman kind of approach to its tuning, which usually I wouldn't like, but on the Mino it's actually quite good. But should you choose to want to play around with the EQ, they also offer you a 10-band PEQ with plus 12 or minus 12 decibels of headroom to play with, and the Q curve adjustments can also be done in decimal numbers. And I find that dialing in your ideal sound with the Tanchjim app and the Mino is a lot more intuitive and easier to do than with anything that Moondrop gives you with their DSP products. So again, quite an improvement there. The other thing is you can adjust the hardware volume of the Mino themselves, which is separate from the digital audio control of your phone. This is something that I have to do through like the developer settings in an Android phone for the Moondrop Sparks and basically any other TrueWise product. But with the Mino, it's already in the app. The app can also let the Mino remember this volume level, so storing the volume level on the Mino themselves, so you don't have to like change the volume every time you connect to a different device, basically. Finally, you got the touch sensor, which detects that when you're taking the Minos off your ears, it'll automatically pause your music and automatically resume when you put it back in. Again, another one-up compared to the Moondrop product. And as one more thing, you have the low latency gaming mode, which brings the honestly really terrible 500 millisecond response time down to more like a tolerable 250. Still not great. I'm definitely not recommending this for gaming. If you really want to do mobile gaming, like get a wired set, it'll be a lot better for the lower delay. But I will note that my Tanchjim Mino, it shipped with a 1.00 firmware that had a lot of problems connecting the Bluetooth and interfacing with the Tanchjim app. However, if you do get like a unit that ships with a 1.00 firmware, make sure to get the Tanchjim app and update the firmware in the Mino, which will basically solve all these problems. After a hardware update, I have no problem with this Mino. And the firmware it's on right now is 1.3.6. Just overall, you will see that Tanchjim, like, they just kind of do everything a little bit better with the Mino compared to like the Neko Cake or Space Travel. I guess the only thing features-wise that I would want to have more is waterproofing, which is something that would have been sorely welcomed. Now, as far as tip rolling goes, I find that the stock ear tips that come with the Mino, which are these kind of small white thingies, they're actually quite alright already, both in terms of comfort and sound. For tip rolling here, the sound is not going to be affected that much compared to just, messing around in the EQ. My only complaint would be that the silicone here, it's kind of yellowing already, and I haven't used it much at all. These tips, I've used it for like 5 times for putting them in like a storage box, but it's already kind of yellowing compared to the more white looking earpieces here. I've also tried using like Final Type E for True Watch ear tips. I've also used stuff like the Moondrop spring tips because they have like a smaller size, as well as the nozzle, it's a bit shorter, and they fit on the Mino quite fine. But the problem you encounter is that they won't really seat themselves in the case correctly, and that'll stop the charging from happening for the case because like it's just too big, it kind of juts out. So with the Mino, pretty much you'll be sticking with the stock ear tips, or you'll have to find something of a comparably small and short nozzled size to match with it. But yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get into the sound of the Tanchjim Mino. Now for the sound, I'm gonna be basing my observations on the default profile of the Mino in the 1.3.6 firmware. And overall, it's a neutral, somewhat lean signature, basically a Tanchjim house sound that's very agreeable tonality wise, save for maybe needing a bit more bass oomph. But let's talk about that low end. By default, it is pretty conservative, and the shallow fit of the tips and the design of the Mino mean that there's little sub-bass rumble, with most low-end energy kind of concentrated into the mid-bass, which itself is also quite low in terms of quantity. The bass detail though is pretty okay for the price, if nothing particularly special. However, should you want more bass energy in your mix, then the PEQ of the popular sound preset, like I said before, it will basically give that needed boost, which shows that the driver inside is very adept with an ever so slightly extended decay and not too much muddiness. And if you really want to push it, you can actually dial in the custom EQ to give you a bit more bass presence with the Mino as well. Now the mid-range we see here is very much the Tanchjim house sound implementation. It's got a lower mid-range that is ever so slightly on the leaner side, on the thinner side, but not too much, right? It's just enough to kind of trick your ears into believing that you're hearing a more clearer presence and a clearer version of instruments. Upper mids are relatively elevated, with a good deal of care taken to not make it go into sort of shouty or honky territory. I really like it. It's quite refined. I would say though that the upper mid-range, or just the mid-range in general, it shows a slight lack of finer detail portrayal that you often see in Tanchjim's wired models if you've checked out the HANA, the Oxygen, or if you've had the chance to taste the flagship Prism. This one, the tonality is smooth, but I wish that the Mino's mid-range, it was a bit more resolving. That would have been quite nice. The treble range of the Mino is tasteful, pretty conventional, leaning, I guess, slightly on the bright side, with no glaring sibilance or any weird treble spikes that will harm the sound signature. Its lack of detail is expected of the price, but overall it'll be enough for sort of casual listening as long as you're not too picky. And it's certainly a better tuned treble implementation than from non-audiophile related brands, which they kind of don't know how to make a treble sound natural. With the Mino, it's quite organic sounding without having any particularly weird tonality issues. Now overall, the soundstage of the Mino is, I guess, slightly above average. With the wideness of sound, it's kind of like just a little bit outside your head, not too much though. It's not going to be narrow, but it's not going to be wide either. But soundstage height though, I guess, is a bit disappointing. It's almost non-existent. Instruments just kind of line up on a line instead of having sort of That's the height element, you know, which I guess is typical of the price range. I'm not too surprised about that. Detail retrieval of the Mino is solid. Better than, you know, the Moondrop, Neko Cake, and Space Travel, just a little bit, and it's no doubt it's aided by the sort of very well-tuned sound signature, right? Macro details here, they're well presented, though not always well separated. But with micro detail, the Mino, it only resolves just a basic amount. Now, I've alluded a lot to Moondrop's TrueWise products as the competitor to the Mino. And you can see that they share, you know, quite similar designs and feature sets. Well, when pitted against the Moondrop Space Travel, the Mino edges out in pretty much every aspect, but with a slightly higher price tag to go with it as well. You get a case with an actual lid on the Mino, and it's just a better quality of construction in general. However, aesthetically, I would say that the Space Travel is perhaps a bit more eye-catching than the minimalist Mino. One thing that the Space Travel does have over the Mino is that, from what I heard, the ANC of the Space Travel was slightly more effective. Now, as for the sound, the Minos and the Space Travels' bass are roughly similar at their stock preset. However, when it comes to the EQ headroom, the Mino goes the extra distance and is able to output much more bass, both in quantity and quality if you choose to EQ it up in the app. And mid-range tonality, again, is very similar. The Mino, it has a slight edge in terms of overall clarity. Treble is pretty much the same story here again. One note though is that the Mino, it's able to output at a pretty noticeably higher amount of volume than the Space Travel. So in a very loud environment where the Space Travel kind of struggles, the Mino, it has that little bit extra to push up your volume a little bit to drown out the noise outside when the ANC is not enough. Now for me, I would just definitely pick the Mino over the Space Travel, even for the higher price tag, because you're getting, you know, an improved build, you're getting more versatility with that parametric equalizer. If you're using an old Moondrop Neko Cake or even a Space Travel, and you're looking for like a similar sounding upgrade, I do think that the Mino definitely makes a good argument, and it makes a slight increase in price quite worth it. Going a bit up on the price chain, we have the Moondrop Golden Ages with its planar driver and support for LDAC. Build-wise, I actually still give the win to the Mino, honestly, because the Golden Ages construction, it's more reminiscent of the Neko Cake, just with a different coat of paint, and it's kind of hollow and it looks a bit outdated nowadays compared to a more sleek and svelte Mino. Where we see a difference is that Moondrop beefed up the electronics inside the Golden Ages. It's able to output even higher volumes than the Mino, and overall technical ability is a win for the Golden Ages as well. The upper mid-range of the Mino, it has a bit more presence than the Golden Ages, and its tonality, it just seems more refined than what Moondrop's offering. However, the Golden Age fights back with the slightly better separation. So it's not often that this happens, but I find that Moondrop and Tanchjim have basically slotted these products perfectly onto the sort of price range. Like, if you only have like $25 to spend, they give you Space Travel, which technically it's not that great, but it's a taste of what you can expect for this sound signature. And then with a little bit more money, you go to the Mino, you get a more refined build, you get a more versatile EQ, and then finally, pushing a bit more in the money again, you get into the Golden Ages where you get like support for LDAC and, you know, just overall a higher quality of sound. All three of these TrueWise products have a subtle but noticeable jump in sound quality, that kind of makes them all worth it in their own way. And I find that wherever tier of money that you have, you can find Moondrop and Tanchjim kind of looking to vie for that money that you have. So they're all pretty nice. Alright, so the Tanchjim Mino is pretty much, it's the culmination of Tanchjim's history of releases. Moondrop makes the thing. Tanchjim looks at that, they make something slightly better, slightly pricier, and slightly later. In this case, the Mino is the more refined version of the Neko Cake and Space Travel designs, and it comes at a slightly higher price, and of course it's I think it's like a few months, maybe you could technically say a year or so later. For a wireless introduction to the Tanchjim sound, the Mino offers a solid build, features and performance, and overall just creates a well-made, if albeit somewhat underwhelming, unremarkable True Arts product.